Well, good evening and welcome to the MelanatED Minute where,
We taught the things them.
hey, and today we are joined by Anushka, who is going to talk to us about her experience with the Unboxed line and her own personal connection to one of our shirts. And so I'm going to turn it over and just, what was it about the line? Like, what did you see that kind of triggered a thought, a memory, or an experience for you?
Yeah. Hi. Also, thank you so much for having me here. Whole idea. So I grew up in Pakistan. So coming to the States was like the model minority myth. We've made it. We've come to the land of the great. Right. And so growing up with that idea and that expectation, often when little things would happen, I would never be like, oh, this is racist. I'd just be like, oh, I don't know what this is. I don't know what name to give to it. So, I won't deal with it. And also being brown South Asian from a relatively upper middle socioeconomic background, like, you're not taught these things anywhere. And I was mostly white people in school. So it was like, oh, okay, whatever. But the reason was that one of our colleagues was sharing how he had received a recommendation, and the recommendation talked about the gravitas of a student's accent. And I remembered that when I was in my master's program, I had asked this anthropology professor that I really enjoyed learning with and learning from. And he had written that, Anushka may be smart, or it may be just because she has a British accent. And that's why she sounds smart. But who knows? I never got that fellowship and it was fine. But in that moment, again, I had no name for it. So that's what got me started thinking about like this stuff happens. And then when I really did get into more of like, this is racism and anti-racist work and anti-oppressive work, I started noticing more people and how they talk to me. And so now I only have my regular Pakistani accent when I talk to my parents or to my siblings. But even when I'm speaking to my partner, I've become so trained not to speak that way because people can't understand me. Like I've had students complain about it and like a lot of things. So now I'm like, okay, must always speak in a North American accent. So that, anyways, fun stuff.
It amazes me the sheer gall that people have, like with their, and even beyond like race, just like their just rudeness and disrespect to put something like that in writing, like in a formal writing, as in a recommendation letter. Maybe it's because she has a British accent.
My accent must have been I can't even do it anymore, but it must have been great. That's smart.
As if it's your fault that that person is interpreting your accent as whatever the hell it is they interpreted it as. It's not, the processing happened in their brain. So why is that a reflection on you to the point where they're putting that in a letter of recommendation? Some of these experiences that you had, you didn't know at the time what to call it or how to deal with it, and so you just didn't. What would you call it now? And how do you, or how would you advise others to deal with it?
So one thing is, if something feels off, it's definitely off, right? Like your body always knows, even if your mind doesn't want to accept it. I think at the end of the day, we all have to realize we live in a white supremacist world, no matter where you are. In the United States, right, it's very much around race, but like back home, it's more around caste and class, but that doesn't take away the white supremacist ideals. And so I'm thinking about it, like if I could go back to who I was, right? My argument would be, oh, but at least like at that point, my mentality was like, oh, but thankfully I got a recommendation versus who the fuck does this person think they are that they can speak about me this way, which is who I am now. But I didn't know that I named this given, I really believed in the model minority myth. I really, really bought into it for a very long time, which speaks a lot to my own privilege, of course.
Yeah.
You say you bought into it. Was it like, did you come here fully understanding that concept and what it meant? Or did you buy into it in the sense that you maybe recognize the privilege that you had in that and kind of like moved in that privilege?
I think it was a combination of both, because the expectation was that if you were my kind of brown and you came to the US, you were expected to succeed and get educated and have that specific lifestyle. Right? There was no question that that could not happen. And so like that, knowing that that was going to happen and that that was the only thing that could happen. And because a lot of people who look like me have been able to do it, I knew I had the privilege that I could make the system work for me. And again, that's very naive, because when you're in college is so much more different than when you go to graduate school, in my opinion. College, they'll still coddle you and, you know, protect you, but I was really dumb in college too, so I guess it doesn't help. My college experience wasn't like a regular college experience. I was a caretaker for 3 of the 4 years, so that was my priority, and the world didn't exist outside of that. So, which, you know, is again a privilege in and of itself, that I could just think about who I had to care for. Yeah, I think I bought into it, but I knew that I had that privilege, so I used it.
Yeah.
And I also wondered too, like in the sense of, so there's the piece about the model minority and the privilege that comes with that, but then there's also this piece about you feeling as if you have to shed your accent, even though your accent comes with being, like you say, you're kind of brown. And so like, where did that decision come from, and like how do you make that up in your mind? It's like, yes, I have this privilege of being, you know, minority coming from Pakistan, but then also like I can't be my full self, because when people hear me speak, there is something in my accent that puts people off.
That actually shifted for me 2 years ago when I started teaching, and my course evaluations, the students would constantly say, well, it was 3 things. It was 1, how I dressed, because I wear Pakistani clothes. I haven't found clothes here that fit my body, just because I'm bigger and like, I feel uncomfortable. At least Pakistani clothes, you know, they're loose. So you feel like you can wear something and still look good and feel good, but not feel like, you know, tight. So I didn't wear the right clothes. I'm living in America, so I should learn how to speak American English. And my accent really comes out when I'm really passionate about something. But now I'm like so scared. So like I'm correcting myself in my head, like, don't do it. And then my obsession with telling people to be mindful of other people's pronouns and recognizing people's identities and talking about race. So those are the 3 big knocks I would consistently get on my evaluations. She just has an agenda, you know. So after that, I stopped. When I'm really tired, my accent will come out in classes, but otherwise I don't do it, because I can't deal with the constant, I don't know. I just can't deal with the constant, like, you're not good enough or you need to be better. Because I feel like I get that from so many other places in my life. To get it from students who I love knowing and teaching, and then to be told that, you know, sorry, I can't understand you. Like, oh, okay, great.
And I've shared before with Daphne, I have a similar kind of experience around the way I speak. In my first year in college, one of my suite mates asked me, when did I learn to speak American? And they always used to say they couldn't understand what I was saying, even though I speak English as a first language. It just sounds differently. And you know, my theory around accents is that it's really just about the way you pronounce things differently. And you know how you form, literally how you form your mouth around letters is the difference with accents. And so I remember making the decision to change the way I speak, because I didn't want to hear, oh, I can't understand you. You know, it was hard enough being, I came from straight out of high school in Jamaica to college in the United States, I didn't know which way was up. I didn't need any more problems, like you were saying, right? To parallel your experience. Um, and so, if I can speak the way they speak, then that's the easiest thing for me to do here. So I'm just gonna do that.
Mhm.
And I regret that decision. I regret that decision to this day. Um, because the fact is that I was never ever gonna sound 100% like them. I was always gonna sound different.
Mhm.
And I wish I had been in a different frame of mind. I was in a very fragile state of mind at the time. And so I try not to be hard on myself about the decisions that I made, like these decisions back then. But it just sucks because I just wonder who who I would be or how I would be if I had chosen instead to just be myself. How would my life have been different? How would my experience have been different? Because what happens is you start to talk, so you're never going to be fully fit in America.
Mhm.
You're always going to sound like you're from somewhere else.
Always.
And then when you go home, right? Now you sound like somebody from there who's trying to speak like somebody who's from America. And so there's no place for you to fit there.
Mhm.
I One of the things that I really struggle with and makes me emotional fairly frequently is, you know, how what would life be like if people were just able to just be themselves? In some of these conversations, we hear people saying, "I finally I finally find it possible to be able to bring my full self to work." And how sad it is that you have not been able to be your full self at any point in life. And the extremes of that are different based on whatever identity we're talking about, and where we're talking about, because some things are just dangerous. Some things,
Mhm.
it's dangerous to express yourself in
Mhm.
certain ways in certain environments. um and so I would never for myself, I would never say that changing the way that I speak was detrimental to my experience or
No,
anything.
just the wanting to be yourself, right? And only few people get to finally start to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I really and I struggle right now these days, right? One of the biggest struggles that I've had um is figuring out, like, what do I enjoy doing. And it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily see that as a straight line drawn from decisions that you made about how you're going to be based on what your environment is like. But if I have never had the opportunity. I have to be a good student. I
Mhm.
have to speak this way. I have to do a good job at work. I have to dress a certain way so that people think that I'm serious, and as if the clothes that I have on my back have anything to do with my ability or how my brain works,
Mhm.
right? But that's the world that we live in. And so I'm
Mhm.
using this energy to think about how am I presenting myself. And that is brain space and energy that I am not using towards my work,
Mhm.
towards figuring out what I want my life to be like,
Mhm.
towards figuring out what I enjoy. And
Mhm.
so now I'm damn near 40 trying to figure out, do I actually like to swim, or do I just really like being in the water? Is it do I what is it that I enjoy? Do I like reading? Do I like making things? Do I like, and this is stuff that I could have been that energy seems to have been, so for me it's like such a waste,
Mhm.
you
I
know.
feel like that, what you name, Crystal, is the tragedy of being boxed in, and the importance of not just unboxed in the sense of, like, these shirts that we created, right? But it's the conversation, because the mere fact that the worlds that we live in, me born and raised in the US and California, you born and raised in Jamaica, you born and raised in Pakistan, but there's still an aspect of this being boxed in that we're still dealing with that affects our lives, even today. And how a thing that's come up in other conversations, thing that you mentioned, Anushka, in terms of your classrooms, like the evaluations, it's fear, right? like I am changing and morphing who I am because of this fear of a bad evaluation, or because I don't want to have to deal with my students giving me this negative feedback, because that could lead to whatever. And so it's like we're always in this constant, shift that we're going through in ourselves. And like you said, because you can't be comfortable, because like I don't even know who I am. You're always trying to, you know, conform to somebody to make someone comfortable, to make sure that you don't get fired, or you don't get raped, or you don't get beaten, or you don't get shot or put in jail, right? Because of all of these things that are out there, when people try to label us and put us in these boxes that make absolutely no sense, right? And I was talking to my staff this morning just about like things that they're dealing with in terms of, COVID and just overall just life stuff, and how it all comes back to our work. And one of the things that one of my staff mentioned is that, like we say that, yeah, take vacation time. You need to take time off, like do it. But in her head, she says, like, you say that, but I have anxiety already. And me taking off work means that I am going to come back to 1,000 emails and I'm never going to be able to catch up from. And me not being able to catch up from those emails strikes trepidation in me that like renders me, you know, like stiff and powerless. And what she's saying is absolutely connected to American work life, where it's like you have to be the workhorse regardless. And it's like, yes, we give you 22 vacation days a year and da 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 da, but also we're in a hiring freeze. And so you used to have a code person to help you with this, but now it's just you, and you're still expected to do it all. But we know that you really can't do it all. And God forbid you take a week-long vacation and you come back, or you know what I mean? And I was just thinking about, and I'm taking notes because I know to follow up, and I'm looking at this stuff as I'm writing it down. It's kind of going on in my head, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this is insane. That this is work. This is like the life that we've signed up for by virtue of being employees, not at this institution necessarily, but just in America, because this is what work does to people. Same way that being boxed in and living according to all of these standards, it just makes people crazy. Like you literally, both of you, change the way that you speak in order to appease somebody else, and somebody else who, like Krystal said, it doesn't matter because you're never going to fit in or sound, and it doesn't matter. And we've continuously seen that like in this country. And it's like, oh, if you just be the model minority, or if you just do this way, or you just get this education, you just act and behave this way, if you just go and get your gun permit, it'll be fine. Will it? But we continue to do it over and over again, like at no result. And then, like you say, we find ourselves 40, 50, 60 years old, just now at a place where it's like, you know what, bump it. I'm going to do me. I figured out that it's all made up. But at this point, it's too late. You lived more than half your life. And it's like,
yeah,
make it make sense.
It can't make sense, because just like you said, it's all made up. It's all made up. All the rules that you're required to follow: dress this way so that you look professional, wear this so that you don't get, exactly, wear this so that you don't get sexually assaulted, as if
If only it was that easy.
Huh?
If only it were that easy.
If only for that easy, I wear whatever if it would work. Seriously. Right? But it doesn't matter what I wear. Yeah. If somebody's perception is that they can take advantage in whatever way, not just like sexual assault or whatever, but in terms of labeling me as unprofessional because of what I what I wear. What really is your standard of professionalism based on, and why is clothing that important to to that standard? Um,
Mm.
I just it's
I don't know if y'all ever had this, but when I was in, it must have been my during my master's, we had the professional day talk where they prepare you for interviews and stuff. So girls had to wear a pencil skirt, heels, tights. I don't know if you call them tights or leggings, a blazer and a white button-up shirt, and guys had to wear. And so some of us were like, well, what if we don't want to wear this? Or what if we identify as non-binary or trans? Like, and they were like, well, you don't expect to get a job. And if you're someone who's, not from America, coded language, right? Definitely make sure you go shopping from someone who's been living in America, so you don't get colors and stuff. So whenever I go to an interview, I like wear bright yellow or like bright colors, because I'm like, tell me again what's professional.
mm,
Exactly.
mm.
But I'll still speak in an American white accent.
Like, I'm a little bit, but I'm gonna come through, still tone it back a little.
I will say though, and Krystal, I don't know if you've had this experience, but this was when I was working right after college, and I was in the car with my father and on a work call, and talking, fine, everything's done, and I hang up, start talking with my father, and my father's like, oh my God. And I was like, what? He's like, you speak like white people. You speak like the white people. And I was like, yeah, I know. And he was like, I'm so proud of you. You will succeed. Pride in his eyes. And it crushed me. It crushed me.
Have you
Yeah.
had that conversation with him, or?
He says I'm American. And so when I say, oh, I'm Pakistani American, or, of course I remember Pakistan, they're like, no, you don't. Pakistan is not yours to claim. You're an American.
This is your family telling you this.
I mean, for my parents, it's like, for them, when they came to the US, they stopped speaking in Urdu at home because they didn't want me to struggle at school. And so even now, my parents will only speak Urdu to me when we're having a fight or I'm in trouble. Otherwise, we stick to English. They don't speak in Urdu anymore because they have dealt with so much being told you can't speak. My father was told to be a therapist if he wanted to get a job. Like, language is now the more I think about it, it's been very prevalent in our life.
Because it's just like, parents, it's like,
Mhm.
I'm going to give my kids everything I didn't have, I'm going to live in like the good neighborhoods, so all this stuff. We want to send them to the good schools and all of this. And
It was like your last episode was about, right? The whole thing with parents and what they want.
Yeah, one of the things. Yeah, I was about to say it comes up in a few of these conversations about like where these messages that we get, the messages that effectively are building the box around us, right?
Mhm.
So where do we get them from? Some of them come from trash places like student evaluations and whatever, but other ones of these messages come from very well-meaning people, parents primary among them, because they're responsible for socializing their kids to the world. And even there are different kinds of parents and people do it differently, and you can say like be parent well or parent not well, but wherever you fall on the spectrum, if if these messages still get passed on to the kids, even from the most well-meaning, well prepared for parenthood parents, because again, talking about from what you've shared about your dad's perspective, like this is what success looks like. When my child speaks, she sounds like what that is exactly how she's gonna be successful, right? I am proud of that. I am so glad I stopped talking this Urdu. I am, I'm just so glad that we left that behind, because this is what success looks like. Not understanding that that's kind of a like an internalized oppression, right? Trying to define success according to parameters that are not actually indicators of success. And this is why I think these conversations now are important, because maybe somebody who is experiencing this or has recently experienced or still is in a place where they can make an informed decision. And whatever that decision is fine. But let it be your choice, not a choice that's imposed upon you by some standard that, to Daphne's point, is completely made up. You know?
But Anushka, I have a question for you.
Mhm.
Like there's obviously been, kind of like a turn in you in some aspects, but the piece that you're still holding on to, like you mentioned, like in your classroom. And again, I assume that's holding on to this fear about your job or job
Mhm.
security. And so just wondering, like what is it that makes you feel comfortable showing up in a bright yellow suit, but not comfortable coming in with your accent? And like maybe like what would it take or what needs to happen, I guess, in your environment for you to feel whole to come in as your whole self?
Mm. I don't think that's possible, honestly. And I think
Mm.
a lot of my actions are, and this is the Krystal, you had said this, right? Or actually, both of you said this separately at different points, is that so much of it is around fear. And so I show up in bright clothes because I carry a lot of internalized fat phobia. So I believe that if I can be extremely femme or feminine presenting, then that'll make me more acceptable, even though I'm not socially the right weight or size as people.
Mm.
And so I try to control some of that narrative by being larger than life in many ways, right? It would be the same reason why I would wear like 8-inch heels and lipstick when I used to go to work, because I wanted to be seen as like I wanted to be seen, but on my terms. I and I know it sounds really like sad, but I cannot imagine a place like even I'm thinking in my own house, right? I love my partner, great relationship, but in, there is speaking the way that I speak. Like people don't always understand. It gets tired to keep having to explain yourself. And that was one of the decisions I made after years, is that I did not want to date someone who was purely American because I'm tired of having to explain my culture all the time. So a lot of that, like it's just at some point you just get tired.
And it brings me to this thing where people talk about, like if you're in a work environment that's not respecting you as a person, you should just leave. Where
How
am I gonna go?
yeah.
Right. Where is this? Where is this place? Where's Wakanda at? You know, like, because ideally, I mean, obviously, if you're like in a toxic work environment, like that's one thing versus being in an environment that's just America, right? And like things are just going as it is. But it's like you're saying, it's like there is no classroom that's going to be void of the evaluations that you're getting from your students, right? It's like you say, either deal with it and constantly battle it, constantly repeating yourself, or you make that shift so you ain't got to deal with it no
I just like Krystal said, no. But it's also like I can't go back home either. Right. So I would never fit in back home because now I'm too American. So it's like constantly being this in between. I mean, Krystal, you already said it. And so
I sure do.
no place ever feels like home other than literally inside my house when there's no one else, right? Other than my pets and my partner, and that's it.
Hmm. One of the things that again keeps coming up in these conversations is like, Daphne, you were talking about like how does Anushka choose to wear what she wants to wear, but still choose to speak in a way that's not I don't know if it's fair to say authentic to who you are. And and then the conversation about like if the environment is not it doesn't make you happy, then just quit. As if life is that simple, as if these things are that simple. Like we're talking about intersecting oppressions, right? We're talking about not being from this country, with all the sentiment that comes along with what it means to be an immigrant, right? And then there is size phobia, fat phobia, and then there is the part of the immigrant conversation is the way I speak and the way I present myself, and then there's I am currently employed, I do not want to be unemployed. And so those things are all happening at the same time. And in the trigonometry and the geometry that has to happen to figure out, okay, where am I gonna, like, what can I take control over in order to maintain, like, what is the priority here? The priority here is remaining employed. So then, or whatever it is, like, you, depending on your situation, you make that decision for yourself. But for me, the priority, generally speaking, is remaining employed, because these bills need to get paid regardless. So I can change the way I talk if that will make me staying in this job easier for me, because I have to stay in this job.
Mhm.
Right? It's not about, I'm gonna wear this yellow whatever, but I'm gonna speak this way because I'm tired of repeating myself. I'm tired of people looking at me crazy. I'm tired of people like being disengaged in the classroom because they already assume that I'm not gonna, what is gonna make the biggest impact that's relevant in this moment, right? What I wear might be relevant, but it's less relevant than how they hear me.
Mhm.
And so right now, this is the decision that I'm gonna make. But you don't think about, in the decision making, you don't think about, like, where's that gonna leave you later on, because I am confused all the time about how to say things. And I speak one language, right? But the way we pronounce things in Jamaica is different. And I'm at the point now where I can't tell which pronunciation belongs to which environment. Like the word schedule
Or
or schedule.
schedule. Yeah.
Exactly. So I remember when I was in graduate school, and one summer I was working in orientation and advising. And as I was meeting with the students, of course, we're setting up their class, what do Americans say? Schedule?
Schedule.
Okay, schedule, right. But that whole summer, I was saying, we're gonna set up your class schedule. And every time I said it, I would get this look like, why, do you mean schedule? Yeah, schedule. And in the middle of that summer, I decided, okay, I'm gonna start saying schedule, because it's not worth the idea. I have 15 minutes to meet with these students. Spending 2 of them explaining why I say this word this way and that way is not. I mean, I might as well. We're already behind. My colleague isn't in today. I don't have the time to do it. So I'm just gonna start saying schedule, and it's the little, like, you just keep moving the needle just a little bit. I know I don't know, and it's a small thing, but it's indicative to me of something that I had to give up in order to achieve what has been defined as success here. And then here is the thing. Even after you have achieved what they say success is, no guarantee of happiness.
Oh, not even.
No guarantee of
Anybody
happiness.
else would say that it's successful or that you're successful.
And that's why you got to define success for yourself.
It's just like my friends say, there's no there. So it's like we're striving to get to this place, and you get there, and it's like, I'm not done yet. Like, this ain't it. No, you got to get there, and then you get there, and it's like,
oh, surprise! You got to get there over the mountain.
There's no there, but we keep, like, they call what's the hamster wheel?
Hamster wheel.
Where you going? Where you going, hamster?
I'm late for a very special date. Well, Anushka, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing your experience with us. I really appreciate it. I think that there's going to be a lot of folks that can identify with what we've talked about this evening, and hopefully feel, at the very least, heard and seen, and that their experiences are not singular in the world. So thank you. We really appreciate your time.
No, thank you for having me. This was really awesome. Plus, y'all's shirts, amazing. Amazing. Everybody should get one. This is going to be my graduation gift for myself. So
absolutely. We really appreciate it. All right. Have a good evening.
Thanks, y'all.
when I'm falling. Niggas want it on me, want it tell it on me. Stone up, now I'm stony. I got a lot of fake ones, I just want it bail out. Niggas monkey rojo, I no time to make so. Business emotions, saw a lot of cautions. Try to dodge